All right, ladies, good morning, and welcome to August the 7th for our Zoom mini class. We are going to make an adorable little patchwork card using up scraps and different little pieces from our stash. And in the end, I will show you how you can take this very same technique and apply it to a layout or any of those projects that you might be working on. Like I said, this is a really, really great way to use up scraps and just have some fun with things. So our corner rounder is going to be our biggest tool today, and we will get started. All right, so I have gone ahead and I pulled out, I just kind of went through my scrap stash, and I pulled out all kinds of pieces of paper. Some scraps are bigger than others, but then I kind of narrowed it down to some colors that all went well together. Now, as it turns out, these are not necessarily from the same paper line, but the colors seem to work really well. And so I've got a whole bunch cut. If you have extras, that's always good, because maybe you make 2 cards. Once you've got the first one figured out, I've got an extra strip here that I realized I didn't cut, and you can just kind of mix and match and have lots of fun playing. Now, I think in my email, I gave you the wrong dimensions for our little sentiment strip. So we may have to recut that or see if we can make that work in the space. But you know what? We're using scraps, so there's no reason why we couldn't tuck this aside and use it for something else. Or I just had an idea of another way that we can use it. Anyways, like I said, I've got a bunch of little squares here. They're 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. And then I cut a whole bunch of squares out of pink cardstock, because that was a color that seemed to tie everything together. This will, I will ignore the phone, the voicemail will get that. So this will just mat behind our squares, and I did these 1 3/8 by 1 3/8. You could really just eyeball it if you needed to, but I just wanted them a little bit bigger than my squares. The last piece that I have to cut, which I have not done yet, is I'm going to put a blue background behind all of the pieces when we get gluing. So I'm going to cut that right now at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2.
Sheri, sorry to interrupt. You're cutting out. I'm not sure where your microphone is.
I'm sorry. Let me try and bring it a little bit closer. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, I will. Because it's off to the side, I probably should have used the microphone on my camera, but I didn't, and it's hard to switch between. So I will try to make sure I turn towards you guys and talk. So I'm cutting a piece of blue paper just to be the foundation for my card. So I'm cutting it at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And this is just going to attach right to my card base. And this is what we're going to build on. So we'll get this ready, and then we can focus on our squares. All righty. And I'm just going to set this aside for right now while we prep our squares. But once we start arranging things, then I will bring it back so that we can lay things out and see what it all looks like. Today, I'm going to be using my corner rounder, and I'm just going to be doing a treatment. I'm not going to round all 4 corners. I'm only going to round 2 opposite corners. And this is just going to give it a different look. It's more of that petal look. Why did that one go funny? I sometimes find with my corner rounder, if it gets too jammed up, I have to keep dumping it out. So if you're having trouble cutting, just empty your corner rounder and it should work, as long as it doesn't jump out of your hands like that. So I'm going to cut a corner round 9 squares of my base piece. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. 5. 6, 7, 8. So I do need this one back. I'm going to trim one more. I clearly did not count well the first time, so I want some extras. Okay, so how these are going to get arranged on our card is just like so. And we can change the direction if we need to, or have them all going the same direction. Why is that one a little wonky? Looks like my cutting was a little off. Some of my squares are not quite. So you know what, I'm going to improvise. I'm just going to do this as a strip down the middle of my card. And you can see how it's making that little bit of a flower pattern. And so what I'm trying to do is match pointy corners to pointy corners and round corners to round corners. If you wish, if you like more of a uniform look, you could also turn them so they're all the same. It's totally up to you. And you may not even want to decide right now until we start getting the pattern paper ready. There we go. And you can see mine is going off my card right now. I'm okay with that because I'm going to just scooch them down. That way I can make the top and bottom look like it's a continuous piece. So there we have kind of our foundation. We're not gluing anything down yet because we may want to mix and match and switch things around. And now I'm just going to start laying out some of my pattern paper and creating a pattern on top of these squares. So I'm going to do one floral here and one floral here. With my little cacti, I made sure I got a full shape or pretty close to it so that it doesn't look like it's cut out weird. Yeah, no, I think I'm just going to stick with 2 of them. Then let's do a blue. And like that. Now I'm realizing I didn't use any of my teal, so I could. And this is probably the hardest part of this card, is just deciding what's going to go where. Decisions, decisions. No, I'm gonna leave it like this. So I've got a couple of florals, I've got a couple of cacti, and I've got a couple of spotted pieces. And now I have kind of the pattern that I wish to use for my card. So now, again, I want to go and round those two opposite corners. The only one that it really matters for us to pay attention to is the cacti ones, because I obviously want to make sure that my cacti doesn't go sideways. But these other guys are squares and they're randomly distributed. So you can just pick two corners because we can always rotate them to fit. And if you really want to annoy someone in your family, have them sit with you while you do all this corner rounding with all the click, click, click. This one is top right, bottom left. And we're almost there. All right, prep step number 2 is done. And now we just need to attach them all together. So I'm just going to take one at a time and then put them back into place so I don't lose where they're supposed to go. And I've got just that little bit of pink border showing all the way around. Again, I'm still not gluing them to the card because we may want to still move things around. We still have that option to change our mind. I feel like I should be playing the Jeopardy music as we go through this. You trust me, you don't want me to be singing though. And again, this is one of those things that you could do in front of the TV. It's not a whole lot of thinking involved, but if you prepped all the pieces and got everything glued down, then you got all kinds of options for a whole selection of cards. This would be fun if you had scraps from your Christmas paper and you wanted to make a whole bunch of Christmas cards and just mix and match the pieces in this mosaic style. And there we have it. Now, once again, we've got lots of extras. So if you had wanted to, you could move these over and add a third row. I'm kind of liking how this center treatment is coming out. So I'm going to keep going the way I'm going. All right, I'm actually going to start attaching these center 4 pieces because then the outside pieces will fall into place really easily and we can keep things evenly spaced. So I'm just going to slide these guys down and these guys up. And I am kind of eyeballing, but I want the center of my card to be right here in the center of my squares. So forgive me, I'm going to bring it a little closer to me so I can just get over top here. And I'm just going to stick it down. I'm going to be a little specific today. So halfway through my card will be there. And so I don't know why I'm being fussy today. Just one of those days where I want to make sure everything is nice and straight since my cutting maybe wasn't quite so straight. There's one piece there. Once you get the first one in, the other ones should fall into place quite nicely. There we go. So my first two are in place, and I'm going to tuck the other two underneath it. Making sure all the rounded corners go in towards the center. So there's a start. And if you need to make any adjustments, we can. All right, everybody with me so far? Thumbs up, head nods, awesome, awesome. So now I'm gonna do my top two. So I'm gonna bring these down, and absolutely I am going off the top because I know that I'm gonna trim them down. And once again, I'm matching pointy corner and rounded corner, just to make sure that we're following this kind of flower pattern. Be careful when you're putting your adhesive on, because if you put adhesive on the top, it's going to get a little sticky. We are going to cut that off, so it's not a big deal, but we don't want to waste any glue that's not going to be used. And we'll do the same with the bottom two, matching our pointy corner and our rounded corner. Like so. And then this is where you can see if you've gotten a little bit off kilter. But it's starting to come together. I'm going to give everything a good press now that I know everything is where I want it to go. And this is where I'm now going to flip over, and I'm just going to trim off these extra bits. You can use your paper trimmer. I prefer to use scissors. Just a little easier to control. And now it's all neat and tidy and looks like it's just one continuous piece running down your card. So now all we have to do is finish off with our sentiment. And these are the pieces that I asked you to cut. For my original plan, it's a little bit small, but for my current plan, I'm okay with it. I'm just going to pop it right here in the center of my card. The other option you could do, and this is something you would be better off planning in the beginning, is you could replace one of your pattern squares with your sentiment strip or rectangle. Or you could just do a white square and attach your sentiment to. I actually kind of like this, so I'm going to leave it. And in order to match the look and the feel, I'm going to round these corners. So to match them up, I want this one to be pointy. So that means top left and bottom right are going to be rounded. Yep. Had a second there where I thought I did it wrong. There we go. And I'll do the same on my white. Flying paper on a Saturday morning. And we have that piece ready to go. Now, I always prefer to stamp before I glue, just in case I need to re-stamp it. I have this new stamp set here from Photoplay, and it's got this sentiment down here that says, "You are an amazing human being." So that is what I'm going to use on my sentiment strip. It also has a little row of hearts, so I might be able to fit that in there too. I'm going to stamp towards the top of the piece, make sure my corners are in the right direction. Sweet. And I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to grab some teal ink in order to do my hearts. I've got some Ocean Mist from Gina K. And we'll just tuck that underneath. Cute, cute, cute. So now that I'm stamped and it looks beautiful, I'm going to go ahead and start building my layers just like I did with the squares. And maybe because we know this is a different sized shape, it's going to look a little different. Let's make it look even more different. I'm going to put some 3D foam in behind it and pop up my sentiment. Get rid of all the little bits, the backing bits. And there we go. I just grabbed my sparkle lacquer pen from Hero Arts. I'm going to add a little bit of dazzle to this. Yeah, that comes out pretty fast. So I think, what if I just did this? And over here. That's just gonna add a little bit of sparkle to the card once it dries. So I hope you can see that there are lots of options and lots of ways that you can use these little squares. The corner rounding gives it a little bit of a different look. If you have a couple of different circle punches, you could do this exact same idea with circles, just having that single circle and then a little bit bigger to layer it up and just create some nice vertical lines or go horizontal. Now, I also promised to show you a layout. Which I made this morning, and now there it is. I buried it under my other scraps. So I took this same idea of corner rounded squares and used it as a border down the side of my page. Like so. Absolutely, I could have covered the entire page. If I were to do a second page, what I may do is do it vertical on the left-hand page and then horizontal on the right-hand page. The nice thing about doing this for a layout too is if you wished, you could sub out some of the pattern paper for photos. So it gives you lots of versatility, lots of bright color, and it really uses up those little pieces of scraps. You could use it, as an accent too. So for example, if I would mirror that shape with a smaller photo, or I could tuck it down under here. It doesn't necessarily even have to be continuous lines. It's a great treatment for using a variety of your scraps in different ways. So that is that. Let me get this back into place. Whether you're doing cards or whether you're doing layouts or tags or album covers, if you're doing a mini album, think about using your corner rounder to kind of jazz up some squares or use different shapes if you've got punches and just build mosaics on your background. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you had lots of fun and got some great ideas.